At 2:15 p.m., under the greenish light of St. Augustine's stained glass, Loretta leaned over my husband's open casket and hissed, "You'll be out of that house by Mardi Gras, thief." She said it soft enough to be mistaken for prayer. People bowed their heads anyway. New Orleans knows how to pretend. I stood 2 pews back, gloves on, a black hat tilted the way my mother taught me, and felt age 50 years heavier than 66. My husband, Raymond, lay too still for a man who never agreed with silence. The hymns trembled. The fans whispered like wings. Loretta's perfume, gardenia and gunpowder, burned the air. Mark, 34, with a gold watch bright as accusation, put his arm across the aisle to block me. "Blood inherits," he said, not looking at me so much as through me. "Daddy's house goes to his child. We'll be gracious for a week." Gracious. He said it like a mercy killing. I didn't answer. "Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people." Didn't answer. At my age, I don't shout. I document. In my purse, the matte black envelope pressed against my ribs like a secret Bible. Gold notary seal, my husband's name, and below it, another, Marc Broussard. I had found it 2 nights earlier in the bottom desk drawer, beneath a tin of paper clips and a flattened praline wrapper. Alongside it, a bank receipt stamped in red. $85,000. Cash, dated December 19th, Canal Street branch, 1 day after Raymond died. The organ rose. Loretta dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief that matched her hatband. "He always loved family," she told the pew behind her. "His real family." Sister Althea squeezed my elbow as if to say, "Don't give them the show they want." "Breathe," she whispered. I breathed in the wax and lilies and lies. The priest spoke of mercy, and I thought of numbers. December 18th, 9:07 p.m., time of death. December 12th, 11:14 p.m. An email I found in Raymond's sent folder, subject line, beneficiary update. December 23rd, today. 30 days until the succession inventory locked in our fate. January 22nd, 2025. The day the courthouse would either stamp me steady or shake me loose. When the family line formed for last goodbyes, Loretta slid in front of me again. "Widow," she smiled, flashing teeth meant for cameras. "You can keep the casserole dishes. We'll handle the rest." I looked at Raymond's folded hands. The man who used to crack pecans on the back steps and tuck the shells in his pocket like promises. "I will handle my home," I said, voice even as a ledger. Mark laughed, and several heads turned toward the sound. "You really think a ring beats blood?" "I think dates and amounts beat stories," I said. "And I have both." Loretta's eyes flicked to my purse. She'd always been quick with the tongue, but slower with the math. "What you got there?" she asked lightly. "Another church program?" "Something to read after the benediction," I said. She smiled again, the way cats do at birds who haven't noticed the windows open. "Open it now if you're so sure." I waited until the hymn ended, then walked to the front where the lilies glared and the candles chimed in their glass, and the whole church held its breath as I slid my finger under the gold seal. "If I read this aloud, do you still want your son to carry the casket, Loretta? If stories like this help you breathe, tap, like, and subscribe." The seal gave with a soft crack, like the first ice of January. Paper rasped under my gloves as I unfolded the pages. The congregation shifted, pews creaking like old boats on Bayou St. John. I read the letterhead first. Baton Rouge Genetic Diagnostics. Chain of custody referenced, sample dates, December 15th, 2024, 7:10 p.m. Collection site, Bienville Urgent Care, Notary, E. Lafitte, ID de 2719. I let the details sit in the air. "Mrs. Carter," Father Miguel started. "Perhaps—" "Father," I said, "truth travels just fine in a church." Then to the room. "This document concerns the paternity of Marcus Broussard." A gasp fluttered through the choir loft. Someone dropped a fan. Mark's jaw tightened. Loretta's hand clamped his sleeve. I didn't leap to the conclusion. I walked the congregation there by dates, the way an old mail carrier maps streets. December 15th at 9:42 p.m., Walgreens at Rampart. Camera shows 2 individuals purchasing a DNA test kit. December 16th and 17th, Hospice logs say I signed Raymond's morphine sheets at 8:20 a.m. and 8:20 p.m., with Sister Althea and Nurse Trin witnessing. December 18th, Raymond passed at 9:07 p.m. December 19th, $85,000, cash withdrawn by someone with a temporary authorization at Canal Street. And on December 12th at 11:14 p.m., an email from Raymond's account, beneficiary update. Loretta's voice sharpened. You went through his email? I went through our home, I said, which you're trying to take. Mark stepped forward. Read the result, he demanded, face flushed. Say it. My hands were steady. Years of sorting letters steadied them. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The room went soundless. Even the candles stopped flickering, like air forgot what to do. Loretta's mouth opened and closed with no words, just the soft click of pearl on tooth. Mark's bravado cracked in his pupils. It's a lie, Loretta finally said. Raymond did this to punish me. She smiled around at the pews. We all know men get petty. Raymond was in hospice the week the samples were collected, Sister Althea said gently from behind me. He couldn't walk to Bienville. Loretta shook her head. Chain of custody can be faked. Cheap clinics, cheap paper. She gestured to the envelope. Where'd you get that? Your kitchen printer? From Raymond's locked desk, I said. Second drawer, paperclip tin, praline wrapper. I watched Mark flinch at the last detail. He loved those caramelized pecans, always leaving the wrappers like breadcrumbs of entitlement. Father Miguel raised a hand as if to bless the chaos. We should be very clear, I finished for him. This is not the full of it. It's the start. There's also a bank receipt and a video and an email and a nurse's log, dates and amounts. If we're counting on blood alone, we should first be sure where the blood comes from. Mark tried a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Even if the test says what you claim, Daddy raised me. That counts in probate. It counts in memory, I said. Probate counts signatures. Loretta lifted her chin. We'll see you in court, widow. Today you embarrassed yourself. Tomorrow the judge will evict you. I tucked the paper back into the envelope. Tomorrow, I filed the succession inventory. Day 1 starts now. 30 days. I felt the clock click inside me like a watch being wound. Mark's phone buzzed on the pew, face up. For a blink, a banking app glowed, and I saw a name I recognized from a notary's stamp. Why would Mark have a contact named E? Lafitte? Cash only, starred as a favorite? July 4th, 1991, smelled like burnt sparklers and cheap beer. Raymond stood on the porch in a Saints t-shirt, promising he'd be home before midnight. We'll go see the river fireworks tomorrow, Evie, he said, kissing my forehead, slipping out with his friends. He came back at 3:12 a.m. with a sheepish grin and lipstick on his collar, the color of a guilty cherry. I folded the collar between paper towels and wrote the time on a sticky note. I wasn't the loudest. I had dates and amounts. That was the night I started keeping a ledger of my life. Not a diary. Those make you poetic and foolish. A ledger makes you accountable. Every job I held at the post office taught me the same thing. If it isn't stamped, it didn't happen. When Raymond proposed 2 years later, promising no more detours, I clipped the florist receipt to the back of the marriage license and slid them into a plastic sleeve. Keeping love tidy is how I believed I could keep it safe. He wasn't a monster. He was a charming man who liked to feed the monster of being adored. Loretta knew this back when she had him. She fed it with fire. I fed it with cornbread and patience. When she sashayed into St. Augustine's at his funeral and called me thief, it wasn't the insult that burned. It was how familiar the theater felt, the way Raymond had always attracted crowds and chaos. Back home that night after the funeral, I set the envelope and the bank receipt on the kitchen table like 2 playing cards no one wanted to admit were aces. The house hummed with refrigerator motor and December rain. I made tea, unsweetened. The clock over the stove ticked like it was chewing. January 22nd loomed in my head, the day the courthouse would decide if my quiet years counted. I opened the ledger I still keep, black composition book with the marbled cover. December 23rd. Loretta calls me thief. Mark announces blood right. DNA envelope. Baton Rouge Genetic Diagnostics. Bank receipt, $85,000. Cash, Canal Street, Deck 19. Contact on Mark's phone. E. Lafitte, cash only. I penciled a question mark beside the name. Then the memory flickered of July 4th, 1991. How I pressed that lipstick collar in a phone book and promised myself, next time, I won't just keep the proof, I'll use it. At my age, I don't shout. I document, I told the kettle, and it answered with a whistle. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We can talk, not here. Tomorrow 10 a.m. at the hospice. Trin. Nurse Trin, the one who signed the morphine logs. I felt the ledger inside me turn a page. I slid the DNA pages back into their matte skin, pressed the gold seal flat, and placed the receipt atop it, red stamp bright as a wound. I left the kitchen light on for the ghosts and the lawyers, because as I turned to leave, I realized the receipt wasn't just a number. It had a second imprint, faint, like a name dragged by a wet stamp across the counter. Why did the shadowed imprint spell co-auth L.J. Broussard when Raymond died the day before? By 9:42 a.m. the next morning, I was sitting in the hospice parking lot, rain needling the windshield. 10 minutes before my meeting with Trin. I had the envelope on the passenger seat, the bank receipt in a clear sleeve, and a magnifying glass from my days reading fine print on postal insurance forms. At 66, your eyes need friends. I pulled the sleeve into my lap and studied the bank stamp again. $85,000, cash. Below, faint and smudged, the shadow line, co-auth L.J. Broussard. Loretta Jean, bold enough to stamp her initials over a dead man's money. But the date, December 19th. Raymond passed December 18th, 9:07 p.m. How does a dead man give permission by mid-morning? The glass revealed another breadcrumb, teller ID 4382, and a note code, temp auth form 12B. I jotted both into my ledger. I would need the exact phrasing when I asked questions at the bank. Dates and amounts. Words matter, too. Nurse Trin waved me in from the sliding doors, her scrubs the color of careful sky. We sat in the family room with the soft chairs and a painting of camellias pretending nothing bad happens here. She folded her hands. I shouldn't be involved, she said, eyes flicking to the security camera dome in the corner. But I saw something. What time? I asked out of habit. December 15th, around 7 in the evening, she said. I was on break. Bienville urgent care across the street was busy. Loretta came in here first, then left with Mark toward the urgent care. Later that night at 9:42 p.m., I ran to Walgreens for throat lozenges and saw them buy a DNA test at the counter. And the hospice logs? I asked. People will say I faked them. Her back straightened. I sign what I see. December 16th and 17th, you were here at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. every time. She slid a photocopy across the table, her own, with her own pen marks. Keep this. I made it before I realized how ugly things might get. N1 hardened to N2 in my mind, indications to documents. One rung up the ladder. And Mark? I asked. Any visits? Conversations? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. On the 18th, before Raymond passed, Mark was in the hallway on the phone. He said, Mom, E. Lafitte said cash will make it smooth. The notary's old. He'll stamp anything. She swallowed. I shouldn't have heard that. But walls here are thin. My pulse beat time with the rain. E. Lafitte, cash only. The starred contact on Mark's phone. The notary on the DNA report. The same, or a cousin. I wrote E. Lafitte twice, circled both, and drew a line between them. Trin, I said, touching her hand. You've done more than enough. If anyone asks, I found this on the public wall. I slipped the log copy into my folder. And if they threaten you, call me. I feed monsters too, but I do it with paperwork. In the car, I dialed the Canal Street branch and asked for teller 4382. A young voice came on, chipper until I said, Temp auth form 12B. Then he stalled, put me on hold, came back with a script about privacy law and how managers handle complex authorizations. Who's the manager? I asked. He breathed. Ms. Broussard, Loretta Jean. The line clicked, and a new voice arrived, honey over ice. Mrs. Carter, calling about money that isn't yours again? I'm calling about a form with your fingerprints on it, I said. Tell me, Loretta, who signed Raymond's name at 10:16 a.m.? On December 19th? She laughed so softly I could hear the smile. If you step into that bank before noon, I'll… Christmas Eve draped the quarter in wet gold. By 6:40 p.m., St. Augustine's was filling for the vigil. Red ribbons on pews, poinsettias balanced like careful flames. I arrived early with my hymn book and the envelope in my purse, its gold notary seal now flattened from my thumb. The clock inside me clicked. 29 days until January 22nd. I'd planned quiet, sing Silent Night, light a candle for Raymond, and slip home. But social peace is a delicate recipe. One loud cook ruins it. Loretta was posted at the side doors like a hostess at a steakhouse, pearls and a clipboard. Sign here to protect Raymond's legacy. She cooed to each entry, angling her body so they had to brush past her. We're asking the parish to urge the court to honor blood. She said that word like it had a trademark. Deacon Paul caught my eye, lips a tight line. You all right, Miss Evelyn? At my age, I don't shout, I document, I said. But my hands were not steady yet. I wrote the time in my pocket ledger, 6:47 p.m., deck 24, Loretta gathering signatures at church door. I added, clipboard, blue, gold pen. Mark strutted up the center aisle at 6:55, phone raised like a torch. Family message, he announced, already streaming. We forgive false widows. He panned the camera to the casket spray still on the side table, repurposed as scenery. Laughter flickered from a few pews, cheap and eager. I stood. Turn off the camera, I said. He turned the lens on me. Look who crawled out. Before Father Miguel could intervene, Sister Althea climbed the steps to the choir with her shoulders squared. Phones away. This is the Lord's house. Her voice could slice ice. Loretta floated down the aisle with the clipboard, all satin pity. Evelyn, dear, she said, just loud enough. Out of respect, perhaps sit in the back tonight. I sat by his bed while you were at Walgreens, I replied, just as soft. Respect would be learning the difference between memory and entitlement. She smiled, pity sharpening. Where were you? Deck 19th, 10:16 a.m. Some of us were handling business. The word business gleamed like a blade. Usher Dolores leaned in from the side pew, whispering into my ear as if fixing my collar. Baby, I saw her at Canal Street that morning with a skinny boy in a gray suit. He kept saying, Form 12B. Her hand squeezed my shoulder. You didn't hear that from me. I tucked the detail into my ledger. Witness, Dolores, gray suit, 12B, and breathed. I had N1 ripening into N2. But Loretta wasn't done. She raised her clipboard. For the children of this parish, she proclaimed, sign to stop opportunists from stealing a father's legacy. We are asking the choir to refrain from letting outsiders solo tonight. Eyes slid toward me. 50 years in this church, and suddenly I was a guest in my own pew. Father Miguel hurried forward, palms open. We are not doing petitions, not tonight. Loretta's mouth tilted. Sweet victory. Of course, Father. Then perhaps a vote? She turned to the congregation. All who believe blood should lead silent night. I took the envelope from my purse and laid it on the pew rail, just where the candlelight could catch the gold seal. All who believe truth should sing, I said, keeping my voice even. And tomorrow at noon, Loretta and I will meet in the rectory to end this. No phones, just documents. She clapped once, delighted. Tomorrow then, bring your little papers. I slid the envelope back into my bag, the red bank stamp on the receipt glaring through the sleeve like a wound under gauze. If the rectory door opens at noon, whose voice will be waiting on the speaker, mine or the one that says, Go live? I arrived at the rectory at 11:58 a.m., December 26th, rain-soaked and early on purpose. The hall smelled of lemon oil and old wood. I'd brought 3 folders, A, B, and C, tabbed with dates, Deck 12, beneficiary email, Deck 15, pharmacy footage note, Deck 19, bank receipt. I placed them in a row on the coffee table like stepping stones. The clock clicked. 27 days left. Father Miguel ushered Loretta and Mark into the sitting room at 12:04. Phones in the basket, he said, nudging a wicker bowl forward. We speak, we listen. We leave with less heat. Loretta smiled, dropped a phone, older model, into the basket with a theatrical clack. Mark followed suit, too quickly. Their eyes were too empty. "Ground rules," I said. "You stop the petition. I stop saying Walgreens out loud. We file the inventory without dramatics. If you have a legitimate claim, show it." Loretta rested a cream envelope against her knee. "Always so procedural." She slid it across. "Raymond wrote a letter, dated December 18th. He wanted Mark looked after." Her lashes fluttered. "Recognized him as his own." I didn't touch it. "A dying man wrote a letter 2 hours before he passed while dosed on morphine?" "Love makes time for itself," she said. "Paper does too," I answered. "Let's read." I snapped on my reading glasses and studied the letterhead. Raymond's stationery, yes, but the font on the date line was slightly narrower than the body. I held it to the window. Microprint along the margin blinked back. A faint Staples R 2023 watermark. Raymond hadn't bought paper at Staples in years. He liked the stationer on Chartres. Also, the signature slanted upward. Raymond's hand always sloped down when he was tired. "Father," I said, keeping my voice mild, "would you call Nurse Trin and ask her one question? Did Raymond hold a pen at 7 p.m. on the 18th? Loretta's smile held. "Always the postal inspector." Mark leaned in. "Look, you got the house a long time. We just want the policy. That's fair." "Fair has numbers," I said. $250,000 is not an allowance. Father Miguel dialed on the landline. While it rang, a faint hiss came from the bookshelf near the fern. The fern had a little red eye. I stood and reached into the fronds. A phone, newer model, nestled there on a small tripod, streaming live. Comments scrolled bright as minnows. "Drag her, blood never lies, Team Loretta." The basket phones were decoys. "Turn it off!" Father Miguel snapped, suddenly young with anger. Mark lunged for the fern. I caught his wrist. "No," I said softly. "Leave the audience. Let them learn." Trin answered on speaker. "He could not hold a pen after 5 that day," she said, voice clear. Loretta's smile finally faltered. "Well, perhaps he dictated." "Love, who typed it?" I asked. Mark swallowed. "He did, before. On a paper manufactured in 2023 with a watermark you couldn't have bought at Chartres because that shop stopped carrying Staples stock in 2020. I placed folder B on the table and slid out a receipt. Chartres Stationer. Last purchase, June 12, 2021. Crane paper. Dates and amounts. Loretta straightened the cream envelope with a fingertip. "You're unwell, Evelyn. Obsessed. This is why Raymond wanted peace. I have messages, private ones, that will ruin you." "Ruin me with what? Loving a difficult man? Baking for a choir? Or telling the truth?" I tapped folder C. Here's a different letter. Decra 19, Canal Street. Temp Auth Form 12B. Co-authorized by L.J. Broussard, after the man died. Mark looked at the fern camera, then at Loretta. The room tightened. Social air changes temperature before a storm. Loretta reached for the phone in the fern. "End stream." "No," I said, my voice low as a bass note. "Let your followers hear you answer one thing." Her knuckles went white around the tripod. "If a notary named E. Lafitte never set foot in Bienville on deck." 15. Whose seal is shining on your fake mercy letter? By December 27th, 10:15 a.m., I was at the Orleans Parish Civil District Court with a number in my hand and dread in my throat. The clerk's office hums like a beehive, printers whining, footsteps sticky on tile. I carried folder A, deck 12, B, deck 15, and C, deck 19, in my tote and the black envelope tucked to my side like a rib. Number C129 blinked on the screen. "Ms. Carter," said a clerk with silver glasses, "you're here to file the succession inventory?" "Yes, ma'am. Before January 22. She typed, typed again. "There's a putative heir notice filed yesterday at 3:46 p.m. by counsel for a Marcus Broussard. That triggers a contradictory process." "How long?" She slid a form through the window and made a face that said nothing good. "Earliest hearing date the docket can offer is January 28th. "After my deadline," I said, more to the form than to her. "You can request an expedited setting," she soothed. "But you'll need Substantial proof. Her eyes lifted. I'm not saying it's impossible. I left with papers that felt heavier than law. Outside, the sky was the color of dishwater. My phone buzzed with a new video. Mark, live from a coffee shop, narrating our rectory meeting as if we'd begged for mercy. Comments bubbled. Poor boy. Widow bitter. Give the son his due. The social water turned on me, and I could feel the parish's warmth thinning to polite weather. On Dauphine Street, someone had taped a flyer to my gate. Blood before paper. Candlelight for Raymond's real legacy, John 1, 7 p.m. I peeled it off, folded it into my ledger, and wrote, defamation, date, time. My mailbox hung crooked. Somebody had yanked it, then thought better. I poured coffee and spread the folders on the kitchen table, arranging dates like prayer beads. I was counting backward from the deadline when my phone lit with an unknown number. A young man's voice, a little breathless. Is this Mrs. Carter? Yes. This is Evan. Tell her 4382 at Canal Street. Don't call back this number. Can we meet? Today, 5:30, behind Café du Monde, by the alley gate. I saw what they did with the 12B form. Why are you calling me, Evan? Silence, then a swallow. Because my mother sings in your choir, and because Ms. Broussard, she told me to push it through because the man is gone, and then offered me $200 in cash. I didn't take it. The manager override shows her initials. I made a copy. And there's something else. The surveillance camera above window 3 caught them with an older man, looked frail, signing nothing while she talked. Date deck 19, 10:16 a.m. A second camera. N3 tugged at my sleeve. At 5:30, I said. He exhaled like a boy surfacing. By 5:29 p.m., Jackson Square smelled of beignets and wet rope. Evan appeared in a bank windbreaker, eyes rimmed in worry. He pressed an envelope into my hand, grainy stills, a printout of the override log. Temp-auth form 12B, override LJB 101804. Keep your job, I said. I won't say your name. He nodded. There's one more thing. The thumbprint field on 12B, it says waived, pending notary verification. But the notary didn't sign at the bank. Ms. Broussard said, we'll stamp later with Lafitte. The notary was never there? I asked. He shook his head. Never. I looked at the stills, Loretta in her cream coat, Mark in his gray suit, and an old man leaning on his cane, face turned just enough to show a birthmark like a comma near his ear. My stomach went cold, because I'd seen that comma at St. Augustine, from the second pew, left side, on Christmas Eve, on an old man who nodded through Mass and left before the benediction. If Lafitte never walked into the bank, why did I see his birthmark in my church 2 nights earlier, sitting beside Loretta? The next morning, December 28th, 8:12 a.m., Deacon Paul knocked on my door with a grocery bag and a look. Brought you café au lait, and a thing you didn't ask for, he said, stepping past the mat. He set down a brown box with Walgreens stamped on the side. My cousin manages the Rampart store. I told him we needed the 9:42 p.m. Deck 15 footage for a church dispute. He gave me this before corporate can say no. Inside lay a USB drive and a form letter about privacy that I put under a magnet for later. I slid the drive into my old laptop. The video opened on an aisle of throat lozenges, blue light, humming. At 9:42:17 p.m., the frame caught Loretta and Mark at the register. Mark paid cash. The clerk, tattoos like ivy, bagged the DNA kit. The timestamp burned righteous little embers in the corner. Paul, I said, you are a sermon with legs. He shrugged. I'm a man tired of watching women get drowned in public, he said. Besides, I heard about the John 1 vigil. They're turning our church into a soapbox. Let them set the stage, I said. I'll bring the props. He chuckled, then sobered. There's another thing. The old notary, Lafitte. His daughter sang in choir when she was 12. I called her. She says her father's stamp went missing for 3 days. He's 83 now, mind soft as bread. She found the stamp in a cream envelope on their mantel on the 19th. It smelled like gardenia. Loretta's perfume, gardenia and gunpowder. A woman's signature isn't just ink. Will she speak? I asked. She said she won't put him in a courtroom, Paul said. but she'll sign an affidavit that the stamp was out of his possession on Dex 1519, and she'll come sit in a pew if you need eyes. N3 was now a ladder rung strong enough to stand on. I printed a still from the bank video and taped it beside the Walgreens frame. Dates lined up like soldiers. At 11:03 a.m., my phone blinked with a voicemail from an unknown 504 number. I put it on speaker. A man's voice drifted, thin, papery, measured by old lungs. "This is Emile Lafitte. They said you were cruel. My stamp. It was borrowed. I signed nothing. I don't like how they use my name. If there is a meeting where people are together, I can point." A woman's whisper in the background. "Daddy, rest." Click. I sat very still. Point is a small verb. In a church hall, a finger is a verdict. That night, I called Evan from a payphone near the river. At my age, you learn to keep old machines in your pocket. "Loretta will try to bury the 12B, I said. "She trusts you because she thinks you're scared. Be scared, but also be ready. If she calls again, put your phone on speaker and set it by a radio. Those old AM sets make a fog that recordings love. Let her talk." "I think she will," he said. "Ms. Broussard left a message about a shred date." "Don't touch a shredder," I said. "If she asks, tell her the system locks until January 3rd. "Does it?" "No," I said, "but her pride will make it true." I circled January 19th on my wall calendar, the church's Legacy Sunday potluck, Deacon Paul's idea for an audience that pretends it came to eat. I listed what I would bring to that table: the Walgreens video, N3, the bank override, N2, the affidavit, N2 rising, the envelope, bait, and, God willing, the voice of a bribe, N4. At 9:18 p.m., my phone lit with a text from a blocked number. "You open your mouth at Legacy Sunday, I open your past. Ask Raymond about July 4th, 1991. LL." I looked at the ledger that holds that date like a pressed leaf and felt my heartbeat steady. If Loretta is willing to torch my past, what has she recorded of her own that she's terrified I've already heard? On December 29th, at 4:32 p.m., my kitchen table looked like a precinct desk, folders A through D fanned open, sticky flags like petals. The black envelope sat in the center as if it owned the room. I had one hole left to fill. A voice. Evan texted. "She's calling, 4:45. Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below." We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone. My landline rang. I put it on speaker and held my phone beside it, voice memo open. The first sound was static, the soft ocean of an old AM set, and then Loretta's syrup. "Sweet boy, I need you to make the 12B go away by January 3rd. The shredder's your friend. Cash ready." Evan was all apology. "Ms. Broussard, the system is locked until the 3rd. Manager says no shred until after the holiday audit. Then override," she purred. "Use my initials. You did last time. LJB, you remember." "I didn't," he said, careful. "The override log shows your keycard at 10:18:04, Deck 19. A pause. The radio hiss filled it like fog rolling in. When Loretta spoke, her voice was colder. "Listen to me. The widow is about to embarrass herself. Do not be her ladder. If you help me, 5,000 becomes 10. The radio hiss dressed the numbers so they glowed. I watched the waveforms bloom on my screen. Proof turned into a little city of peaks. Evan swallowed. "And the notary?" "What about him?" she snapped. "Lafitte," he said softly. "He didn't come to the bank." "You like your job?" she asked, bright again. Then, like the story, he verified off-site. The line clicked. The voice memo ticked a final second and saved under a name I typed slowly. Deck 29, Loretta, cash offer, 10K done M4A. N2 became N4, the way a storm becomes a hurricane. One more degree, suddenly a name. I called attorney Valérie Duplessis, a woman who smells like courtroom paper and peppermint. "I have audio," I said, and within an hour I was in her office on Poydras Street, sliding the phone across the desk. She listened with her eyes closed, then opened them like a curtain. "We can petition for an expedited contradictory on the putative heir claim," she said, fingers already composing a motion. Your 30-day clock is our friend now, not theirs. She drafted while I read aloud dates and amounts. Attach the Walgreens frame, she said. Attach the override log. Attach the affidavit from the notary's daughter. We'll keep Emil out of a courtroom if we can. We'll use his daughter's statement and the audio to lay the trail. By 6:18 p.m., the motion was printed, clipped, and signed. Valerie slid me a copy of the proposed order. Judge LeBlanc likes punctual women. Be at the courthouse deck 30, 9:01 a.m. If we draw her, we may get a hearing January 6th, before the vigil, before they can bury you in candles. I left her office to a sky rinsed clean after rain, and for the first time in a week, I walked without measuring the ground. On Dauphine, my porch light flicked on as if the house were nodding yes. The phone buzzed, a video from Mark grinning in a driveway. Family announcement. Legacy Sunday on January 19th will honor real bloodlines. He lifted a cream envelope to the camera, a notary seal winking. Paper loves us too. I held my phone near my speaker and played 3 seconds of Deck 29 Loretta cash offer, 10K M4A. Just enough to hear 10,000 curl like smoke. If their paper loves them, how will it look when their own numbers start speaking over the church speakers? December 30th, 8:52 a.m., I stood in the courthouse hallway with Attorney Duplessis and a manila folder labeled Bundle 1, N1, N3. Inside, Walgreens stills, 9:42 p.m., Deck 15, the bank override printout, 10/18/04, Deck 19, the hospice log copies, and the beneficiary email, Deck 12, 11:14 p.m. The audio, N4, sat on a separate USB like a last candle. We drew Judge LeBlanc. She listened more than she spoke, a habit I trust. Valerie argued the clock. The putative heir notice is being leveraged to chill the lawful inventory. We have dates, documents, and a recorded attempt to obstruct. LeBlanc signed an order like a woman writing her grocery list. Practical, thorough. Hearing, January 6th, 9 a.m. Notice to Mark's counsel by Jan 2. Preservation order to the bank and to Walgreens. Quiet reversal begins in stamp ink. Back home by 11:26 a.m., I started assembly. The living room became a mail room. I numbered everything. Binder 1, church set. Binder 2, court set. Binder 3, insurance set. Each had the same spine. Timeline. Deck 12 John 22. I laid out an agenda for Legacy Sunday like a music program. 1. Opening hymn, the one Loretta loves to solo. 2. Testimony, Memory Veer's entitlement, 2 minutes. 3. Exhibit A, Walgreens, 9:42 p.m. 4. Exhibit B, Bank Override Log, 10/18/04 a.m. 5. Exhibit C, Affidavit, Stamp Missing Deck, 1519. 6. Exhibit D, DNA Envelope, Chain of Custody. 7. Audio excerpt, only when they lie. I practiced the sentences out loud, sharpening them to the bone. At my age, I don't waste breath. I called Deacon Paul. We'll need the fellowship hall projector, a 3.5mm cable, and 2 extension cords. And we seat Emil near the aisle, 2 pews back, left side. He'll come? Paul asked. His daughter will bring him, I said. He won't speak. He'll point. On January 1st at 7 p.m., I stood at my window while their candlelight vigil flowed past like a river of accusation. Blood before paper, their signs murmured. Mark led a prayer into a camera. Loretta dabbed at dry eyes. I wrote the time in my ledger and returned to my labels. Let them build their stage. January 3rd, 4:05 p.m., my phone rang from a blocked number. Loretta. I hear you're collecting wires like a spider, she said. You know what spiders get? Brooms. I prefer vacuums, I said. They leave fewer witnesses. She laughed. January 6th, judge or no judge, you'll be singing from the sidewalk. And if you touch that audio, I'll sue you for defamation. Truth has a special immunity, I said. It doesn't flinch. Then hear some. Her voice dropped, intimate. July 4th, 1991. You're Raymond and I on a balcony while the fireworks bloomed, and your name wasn't the one he said. I let the silence rest between us like a pond. You mistake my ledger for a leash, I said. It's a compass. Compass won't save you when the crowd smells fear, she said, and hung up. On January 4th, I walked to Chartres Stationer and bought 3 crane envelopes and a weighted black pen, the kind that makes signatures behave. The owner wrapped them in brown paper. "For letters that matter," he said. I addressed one to Judge LeBlanc, courtesy copy, one to the insurance adjuster, and one to Father Miguel, each with a timeline and a courteous request. Please preserve the Fellowship Hall AV for January 19th. By January 5th, 8:02 p.m. My living room glowed with post-it constellations. I set an old metronome on the table and wound it. Tick, tock. 17 days to the deadline, 1 day to the hearing. The house hummed a low, agreeable note. I placed the USB labeled Deck 29 Loretta Cash Offer 10K.M4A into a velvet pouch, the kind you save for wedding rings, and tucked it into binder 1 under a flap that read, in my square postal hand, open only if they lie. When Mark takes the stand on January 6th and swears he never bought a DNA kit, how will his face look when Walgreens starts singing his receipt number into the courtroom air? January 5th, 2025, 10:12 a.m., the rectory smelled of lemon oil and damp paper. Rain streaked the stained glass windows, drawing crooked halos over the floor. I'd asked Father Miguel for one more meeting before the hearing. Just Mark and me. No cameras, no mother, no excuses. He arrived 5 minutes late, gray suit damp at the cuffs, eyes swollen from a night that probably hadn't ended yet. He looked less like a predator now, more like a man who'd borrowed confidence and couldn't return it. I set my leather ledger on the table between us. "Sit," I said. "Let's clear the fog before the judge hears thunder tomorrow." He sat, stiff. "Mom says there's nothing to clear." "Then she should be here," I said. "But she isn't, because she knows talking means leaving fingerprints." His jaw tightened. "You think you're smarter than her." "No," I said. "Just older, and done lying for men who hide behind women's charm." I opened the ledger to December 15th. "You bought a DNA kit at Walgreens at 7:10 p.m., I said, tapping the entry. "Then at 8:30 p.m., you drove your mother to Bienville Urgent Care to collect a sample from a dying man she said was your father. Who held the swab?" He blinked. "She did." "Who signed the consent line?" "She said Raymond told her to. He couldn't even talk, Evelyn. He was doped up. She whispered, 'Do this for our future.'" The tremor in his voice was the sound of guilt waking up. "And the bank," I said, turning a page. December 19th, 10:16 a.m. Withdrawal of $85,000, signed with a temp auth form. "Your mother told you she had permission. Did you see him sign?" He stared at the rain. "No." "You saw her sign?" A pause. Then quietly, "Yes." I slid a photocopy of the receipt across. "She left the duplicate in Raymond's desk. That's how I found it. Her perfume still on the edge, gardenia and bad timing." He exhaled through his teeth like someone cutting a wire. "She said, you'd ruin us." "Son," I said, the word tasting strange but true. "She already did. You just haven't finished paying for it." He leaned forward. "What do you want from me? To confess in court? They'll tear me apart. I want you to tell the truth before it gets subpoenaed. Tomorrow, Judge LeBlanc will ask if you authorize that withdrawal. If you lie, you'll drown with her. If you tell the truth, she sinks alone." He rubbed his palms over his face. "She'll never forgive me." "She's never forgiven anyone," I said. "Forgiveness isn't her business. Control is." We sat in silence while the rain slowed to a whisper. He looked at my ledger, at the careful columns of dates and amounts. "You really wrote it all down," he said. "At my age," I told him, "I don't shout, I document." He nodded, eyes wet. "You'll have what you need tomorrow." When he left, the chair still warm, I saw a corner of paper folded under the table. A handwritten note, smudged but legible. "Mom, courtroom, Plan B, call Evan before 9. Evan, the teller, my whistleblower. If Loretta plans to call Evan before the hearing, does that mean she's silencing him or recruiting him? January 6th, 2025, 8:57 a.m. The hallway outside courtroom 3C tasted like toner and cold coffee. Attorney Duplessis stood beside me, neat as a pin, our exhibits clipped in binder 2, A, Walgreens purchase, Deck 15, 7:10 p.m. B, Urgent Care Collection, Deck 15, 8:30 p.m. C. Hospice logs, Dec 1617, 8 a.m., 8 p.m. D. Bank override log, Dec 19, 10:18:04 a.m., LJB. E. Affidavit, Lafitte's stamp missing Dec 15-19. F. Audio memo, Dec 29, cash for shred. I kept the black DNA envelope zipped in a side pocket. Not our spear, our signpost. Duplessis had drilled it in. Chain of custody is shaky for the lab printout you found at home. We'll use it to explain motive and timeline, not as the pillar. Dates and amounts, not miracles. At 8:59, my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. She called, told me to fix it before 9. I'm in the hallway, scared. I wrote back, stand where you can see the bench. You won't be alone. The bailiff opened the door. Inside, Judge LeBlanc sat with the poise of a metronome. Loretta entered cream first, pearls bright as hubris. Mark trailed, jaw clenched, not meeting my eyes. Their attorney laid a leather folio on counsel table like he'd brought a sword. On the contradictory hearing, putative heir petition, LeBlanc said. Movant? Duplessis rose. Your Honor, what they call legacy is a paper trick. We will show an engineered paternity narrative, a bank action after death, and an attempt to destroy records. We seek to stay the petition and protect the succession inventory within the statutory 30 days. Proceed, the judge said. Exhibit A went up first. Walgreens receipt and frame. 7:10 p.m., Dec 15. I watched Mark flinch. He recognized his own watch on the still. Exhibit B, urgent care intake at 8:30 p.m. The order finally made sense even to the pew-sitters' minds that had followed us here. Then D, the bank override, 10:18:04 a.m., Dec 19. The date after death, the log stamped LJB. LeBlanc's pen stopped moving. I could feel the room's air lean toward us. Call your witness, she said. We called Evan. He took the stand like a boy climbing a tall ladder, one rung at a time, voice thin, honest. He described Temp Auth Form 12B, the override screen, the manager's key card, the phrase, push it through because the man is gone. Loretta's lawyer sprang up. Hearsay. Also, privacy statutes. Any recording is unlawful. Duplessis stood, unbothered. Louisiana is a one-party consent jurisdiction, Your Honor. The teller placed the call to my client at her request and authorized the recording. We are within the law. She placed Exhibit F on the lectern, the audio file, a short transcript, and a sworn declaration from Evan. We also have preservation orders already served. LeBlanc nodded. I'll hear the clip. 30 seconds. The room filled with the ocean hiss of AM static, then Loretta's voice. Make the 12B go away by January 3rd. The shredder's your friend. Cash ready. 5 becomes 10. No gasp this time. Just that heavy courthouse silence that means a nail has found wood. Cross-examination scraped at Evan. Why help now? Why not before? He swallowed. Because my mother sings in their choir, he said, glancing at me. And because right is right. I'm not losing my job to someone's lie. We rested on E, the affidavit about Lafitte's missing stamp. We are not dragging an elderly notary to the stand, Duplessis said. We have his daughter's sworn statement, plus Walgreens and bank records. The pattern is the point. Loretta's attorney finally lifted his sword. Defense calls a final exhibit, a notarized letter dated Dec 18, in which the decedent recognizes Marcus, witnessed by E. Lafitte. He handed it to the clerk. The seal gleamed gold under the fluorescent light. Neat, round, self-satisfied. Duplessis didn't flinch. Your Honor, we move to strike pending comparison with the affidavit on the stamp's disappearance and the bank's footage of Dec 19. We also request the original for forensic examination, ink dating, imprint depth, and a notarial log check. LeBlanc's eyes narrowed at the page. Judges don't gasp, but they do pause. She tapped the seal with her pen like testing a pane of glass. Counsel, where is the notarial journal entry for this act? Loretta's attorney smiled thin. Misplaced. We'll supplement. The judge looked from paper to people. You could feel the decision building, like pressure in old pipes. Mark stared at the floor. Loretta watched the seal like it could bless her. If LeBlanc asks the clerk to take that letter to evidence and calls for the sheriff's fraud unit now, Will Loretta smile or start running in those cream heels? January 6th, 2025, 9:41 a.m. Judge LeBlanc held the defense's letter up to the fluorescent light like a jeweler checking a flawed diamond. "Counsel," she said, "this seal purports to be E. Lafitte's. The court has before it an affidavit that Mr. Lafitte's stamp was unavailable, Dec. 1519. Your document is dated Dec. 18. Where is the journal entry and the ID check for the signer?" Loretta's attorney adjusted his square tie. "We'll supplement." "Not today you won't," LeBlanc said. She turned to the clerk. "Mark the exhibit forensic hold. Sheriff, collect the original and transport to evidence for ink dating and seal impression analysis. Defense will produce the notarial journal by close of business tomorrow or face a contempt hearing." The clerk's rubber stamp landed like a hammer. Loretta's face didn't move, but her pearls trembled. Duplessis rose. "Your Honor, with the court's indulgence, 2 brief points. First, movant's succession inventory deadline is January 22nd at 4 p.m. We request an order protecting her right to file without chilling tactics. Second, given Exhibit F, the cash for shred audio, we ask for immediate preservation of bank and store records and referral of the notarial question to the district attorney." "Granted," LeBlanc said, as if she were checking items off a list. "The putative heir petition is stayed pending resolution of fraud issues. Ms. Carter's filing window is protected. Any further interference will be dealt with as contempt." Loretta's lawyer sprang up. "Objection! This is a family dispute, not—" "Sit," the judge said, without raising her voice. She looked at Mark. "Mr. Broussard, you are the named putative heir. Do you wish to testify as to the events of Dec 15 and Dec 19? You are under no obligation, but the record benefits from clarity." Mark stood like a man walking onto an icy porch. He cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor." He told it straight. 7:10 p.m. Walgreens, 8:30 p.m. Urgent care. His mother holding the swab. 10:18:04 a.m. Dec 19. Manager override LJB. No thumbprint. No notary present. "I believed what she told me," he said. "I don't anymore." Loretta shot to her feet. "Perjury," she cried. "He's confused. That woman," her finger stabbed the air at me. "She coached him." "Ms. Broussard," LeBlanc said, "one more outburst and you'll be removed." Loretta's lawyer tugged her sleeve. She wrenched free, eyes gone bright and blade sharp. "You think paper will save you, Evelyn? I have messages. I have photos. I have—" "Enough," the judge said again, and nodded to the bailiff. The door at the rear opened. A deputy stepped in, clipboard under his arm. Duplessis, calm as a hymn, slid a last sheet across to the clerk. "Your Honor, one more exhibit for limited purpose. Bank compliance notice acknowledging an internal review of the 12B event and a temporary administrative hold on the $85,000. The estate is protected." LeBlanc signed the preservation orders. "Sheriff, you are directed to serve Ms. Broussard with this order to preserve all devices and accounts. Any deletion after this moment is spoliation and will be referred for charges." The deputy approached. Loretta tried to smile at him, the way cream charms coffee. It didn't stir. He handed her the papers. She wouldn't touch them. They slid down her lap like unwanted truth. Court rose. The room exhaled. Mark stared at the table as if it might tell him what to do next. I slipped the black DNA envelope back into my bag. It had done its job, not as a sword, but as a compass. On our way out, Loretta brushed past me, gardenia scraping the air. She hissed without moving her lips. "You think you've won because a judge likes your dates? We're not finished." "At my age," I said, "I only finish things I can sign." She smiled, and the smile had teeth. "Watch your choir." Then she was gone in a ripple of cream. The deputy caught up to me in the hall. "Miss Carter, the DA's office wants to schedule a proffer this week. You'll get a call." I nodded. "I'll be home. I keep a ledger." My phone buzzed. A message from Deacon Paul. "We kept the Legacy Sunday slot on Jan 19. Your call, do we cancel?" I typed, "No, we'll feed them, and we'll feed them the truth." If she warned me to watch the choir, what exactly is she planning to do to that microphone on January 19th? Cut the cord or try to cut my voice? January 6, 2025, 11:02 a.m. The courtroom felt smaller after recess, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Judge LeBlanc returned with a legal pad, the kind that makes men honest. I kept my ledger on my lap, spine warm against my knees. Duplessis squeezed my elbow once, our quiet version of a drum roll. Back on the record, the judge said. 2 witnesses, then rulings. We called Evan again, this time with his bank blazer buttoned and his voice steadier. Duplessis walked him through screens and procedures like stairs. Temp Auth Form 12B, the override prompt, how a manager's keycard imprints initials on the log. She played 30 more seconds of the recording with the court's permission, Loretta's voice adding, "It's legacy, baby. Do this and your family." The defense objected. "Cultural puffery," their lawyer said. "One-party consent is not puffery," LeBlanc replied, crisp. Overruled. Cross tried to rattle Evan with policy manuals. He didn't crack. "It wasn't grief paperwork," he said softly. "It was an instruction to hide a log." Then Claire Lafitte, the notary's daughter, took the stand. She held her father's notarial journal, leather worn thin. "Daddy is lucid," she said. 83, slow but careful. On Dice 18, there is no entry for Marcus or Loretta. On Deck 19, I discovered his stamp missing from our lockbox. I located it later that afternoon in a cream envelope on our mantel. I filed an affidavit because I know what stamps do. They make lies heavy. Duplessis asked, "Did your father notarize any document for the Broussards in December?" "No," she said. "And he would have remembered. He remembers hymns and names." The judge asked for the journal. Claire opened it to December. Neat rows of acts, IDs, thumbprints, then a blank where the defense's fairy tale wanted to live. The blank spoke louder than any sermon. Duplessis rested. The defense tried one last gambit, a printout of the Deck 12, 11:14 p.m. Beneficiary update email. "The decedent wrote this," counsel claimed. "From a hospice bed under morphine," Duplessis said. "We move for a subpoena to the email provider for IP and device logs." "Granted," LeBlanc said. "Return within 7 days." I watched Loretta tap under counsel table. Nervous toe or something meaner. The deputy behind her frowned. He'd noticed it too. Then the judge cleared her throat. "Before we close, the court addresses behavior in this room." She nodded to the deputy. He held up a phone inside an evidence bag, screen still lit. "During this proceeding," she said, "Ms. Broussard attempted to send a message. Delete camera 3 by 1 p.m., cash today to a bank employee number. This was after my preservation order." A hush fell so complete we could hear the fluorescent hum growl. "Ms. Broussard," LeBlanc said, "you are in direct contempt of this court and are remanded into custody for obstructing the administration of justice. The district attorney will determine charges re-tampering, forgery, and bank fraud upon receipt of the forensic report on the notarial seal." Loretta stood too fast. The chair bit the floor. "You can't," she started, but the deputy had already stepped forward. The cuffs clicked like a small, accurate clock. Mark closed his eyes. No one clapped. Justice isn't theater. It's paperwork with a pulse. The judge signed 3 orders. 1. Stay of the putative heir petition. 2. Protection of my John 22 Forgis PM filing window. 3. Forensic hold on the forged recognition letter, plus subpoenas to the email provider and the bank's camera server. As we gathered our binders, Duplessis leaned in. 2 more things to clean, that Deck 12 email and Raymond's phone unlock. If the IP lands in Loretta's kitchen, the DA will have a bow to tie. I nodded, feeling the ledger's weight turn from shield to staff. We walked past the holding door, where cream fabric disappeared into county gray. My phone buzzed. A new message from the clerk. "Subpoena accepted. Provider logs incoming by Friday." I looked at the date on my watch, then at my ledger's empty line beneath Deck 12. If the provider's log says that beneficiary update came from Loretta's Wi-Fi at 11:14 p.m., whose fingerprint will the DA find on Raymond's unlocked phone, hers alone, or someone I haven't counted yet? January 8th, 2025, 2:11 p.m. The clerk's email landed like a stamp. Provider logs returned. The Deck 12, 11:14 p.m. Beneficiary update came from Loretta's home IP. Device fingerprint matching Raymond's iPhone. Passcode entered manually at 11:13:52 p.m. No Face ID, no biometrics. Just numbers and nerve. Attorney Duplessis read aloud, pencil ticking each line. This anchors intent, she said. She had his phone, she had his password, and she used both. She forwarded the packet to the district attorney with a cover letter sharpened to points. By January 10th, 9:40 a.m., the DA took our proffer in a windowless room that smelled like staplers. I laid out my ledgers. Evan walked through bank screens, palms sweating, voice steady. Claire Lafitte presented her father's journal, index finger, marking the blank day where Loretta wished a signature lived. Charges? I asked in the hall. The assistant DA straightened his tie. Forgery of a notarial act, attempted bank fraud, conspiracy to destroy records, and contempt is already in the basket. We'll move for no contact orders and a financial hold on the $85,000 pending restitution. January 12th, 4:06 p.m. Brought a ping. Bill of information filed. Loretta's mugshot sat in a tiny link, cream traded for county gray. Mark called through counsel. He'd signed a cooperation agreement, no charges if he testified truthfully, and completed 200 hours of community service, half of them at the parish pantry. Let him stock cans, I told Duplessis. Hands learn better than tongues. January 19th, Legacy Sunday didn't cancel. It changed. The fellowship hall swapped petitions for pans of jambalaya. I stood by the mic, Deacon Paul at the projector, turned off on purpose. No exhibits today, I said. Only thanks. The room murmured, Amen. I sang His Eye is on the Sparrow, soft enough to make the floorboards listen. Halfway through, Emile Lafitte lifted a handkerchief. His daughter pressed it into his palm. When I finished, the room let the quiet sit and then stood, not to cheer, but to agree. On my way down, Mark waited by the coffee urn, wearing an apron that said Parish Kitchen. He didn't ask for absolution. He ladled gumbo and kept his eyes on the bowls. I'm here till cleanup, he said. Then tomorrow the pantry. Good, I said. Bring a ledger. You'll learn to count what matters. January 21st, 2:33 p.m., bank compliance emailed, internal finding, override improper, temp auth form, 12B void ab initio. The bank reversed the $85,000 into an estate escrow pending probate. No appeal from Loretta permitted while under preservation order. They'd rather eat the loss than explain it to regulators, Duplessis said. Either way, it's not hers. January 22nd, 3:41 p.m. I stood at window 4 and slid the succession inventory through the slot. Dauphine Street House, $420,000. Policy proceeds, $250,000 placed on administrative hold until clearance. Pension, the ledger of receipts like a spine. The clerk stamped received and smiled. On time? She said. I walk on time, I answered. I stepped into the winter light and looked back just once. The courthouse didn't look like Mercy. It looked like math, and that's better. Mercy changes its mind. Math doesn't. That night, a letter from the jail arrived via her lawyer. Loretta, in cream words on county paper. Withdraw your claims and we can negotiate peace. I set it beside the black DNA envelope and the bank notice, then wrote on her letter in red pencil. No. I filed it under January. If a woman who lives by performance has lost her audience, what will she try next? Silence, or one last stunt from a payphone with my name on it. July 22nd, 2025, 10:06 a.m. Summer pressed cicadas against the air, like thumbtacks. I stood in the recording office with Attorney Duplessis, watching a clerk slide the updated deed across the counter. 1127 Dauphine Street, my name alone, the ink still damp enough to shine. Congratulations, the clerk said. We prefer completions, Duplessis corrected, smiling. Congratulations are for lotteries. This is work. Back home, the house hummed a different key. Fresh paint, steady plumbing, a mailbox level as a hymn. I placed the deed inside the fireproof chest, between the preliminary order and the bank's reversal notice. Paper stacked right is a wall, no wind bullies. On the mantel sat a framed check image, $250,000, policy released after the audit closed in May. I'd paid off the small loan on the house, replaced the roof, funded 2 scholarships for the church pantry's teenagers, $20,500 each, names handwritten on envelopes like futures sealed. Mark came by on Tuesdays to stack donations at the pantry. He didn't come to my porch. He knew our no-contact order stood except through counsel. But he mailed a June 9th letter through Duplessis. I've completed 123 hours. I carry boxes and keep my mouth shut. There's a kind of peace in doing the thing and not filming it. At the bottom, a P.S. in small, ashamed pen. I got a job off camera. Good. Let his hands learn what his eyes didn't. Loretta waited. Pretrial hearings slid like beads. Her lawyer filed motions. The DA stacked their own. In early July, she took a plea, forgery of a notarial act and attempted obstruction. 2 years probation, 6 months parish jail suspended, restitution to the estate for legal costs, ban on notarial practice forever. She'd been angling to apply. No contact with me, community service at a shelter she once dismissed as sad TV. Cream doesn't match cinderblock orange. I kept the black DNA envelope flattened in the ledger like a pressed leaf. We never used it as a pillar, only as a signpost, a direction arrow that kept me from getting lost in the story they wanted to sell. On Sundays, I sing alto again. Sister Althea winks when I hit the low notes clean. Emile Lafitte sits 2 pews left, a pink camellia pinned to his lapel year-round because memory can be stubborn and tender at once. His daughter squeezes my hand in the aisle, and I think how women hold up the ceiling when the nails fail. Sometimes, only sometimes, I walk past Canal Street branch and see Evan through the glass. Not a boy anymore, but a man whose spine knows it's needed. He lifts a hand. I lift mine. We let it be enough. The ledger's last pages hold dates, amounts, repairs. Roofer, $14,080. Plumber, $119.40. Choir robes, $368. Pantry freezer, $2,119. I write a final line where July meets itself. Choose yourself without apology. Love doesn't mind a witness. I tape it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tiny mailbox. Flag up. At 7:11 p.m., the doorbell rings. 2 soft chimes. I open to find a cream envelope on the mat, no return address, gardenia ghosting the flap. Inside, a single photograph. Raymond on my back steps, summer of 2003, laughing at something I can't remember, the light easy on his face. On the reverse, in my own handwriting from long ago, a note I'd forgotten. Keep receipts, keep joy too. I stood there, girlish and old at once, and for the first time, I set a receipt down without reaching for a stamp. If grief can live beside joy on the same page, what else can my ledger hold that I haven't dared to write yet? If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.